I'm Trey, owner of From the Ground Up. We specialize in anything outdoor living, and I am a hardscaper.
What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 266 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, we have Trey from the Ground Up for another episode in the I Am a Hardscaper series, where we sit down with a hardscape business owner and do a deep dive into their business. You can find Trey at From the Ground Up 17327 on Instagram. You can find him on Instagram at From the Ground Up 17327. But before we get into today's episode, we want to say thank you to our sponsor, Cycle CPA. If you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. And if you're looking for a software to dive into this season and beyond, check out the How to Hardscape Headquarters. It'll help you budget, estimate job costs, schedule, time track, and manage your employees all in one space, with so much more coming. So if you want to learn more about that, shoot me a message at How to Hardscape on Instagram, or just go to members.howtohardscape.com to learn more about that, as well as our training courses that we have available there, all rolled up into the software. And you can also book a demo with me directly through that. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode with Trey from the Ground Up. Okay, Trey, let's get to know a little bit more about you, yourself, how you got started in the industry. Can you give our audience a little bit of background? Start wherever you want, stop wherever you want, but give our audience a little bit of context about yourself.
So growing up, my dad was always, as long as I can remember, he worked for a landscaping company. Now, it was mainly commercial grounds. Like most boys, your dad's your hero, right? So I wanted to do exactly what he was doing. So, started this side company when I was in high school to raise some money, buy a car, have fun with my friends. Just came up with From the Ground Up as a name. We thought it was cool. And from there, then, it was always just a side business. It was nothing really serious. I went and my wife and I, we've been together since middle school, but we had our first kid right out of high school. So it was, all right, I need to get a real job. This whole running your own business isn't going to work. So I went and worked for a big commercial grounds company. Moved to Northern Virginia, was working, right in DC, Alexandria, Northern Virginia. It just was a crazy area, but taught me a lot. Got out of that, out of the commercial landscape industry. It kind of burnt me out, and I went and worked for a large construction company. Learned all the ins and outs of construction and contract writing, and just dealing with subcontractors, and that, really taught me a lot. And then from there, I decided I was going to start from the ground up on the weekends again. And then it quickly turned into full-time construction job. And then Thursday night, Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, we were doing, hardscaping. And in 2019, in November, I left the construction company and went full-time with From the Ground Up. And we've, hit the ground running as fast as we can. So started it roughly 2008 as when I kind of was doing it in high school. And then 11 years later decided, let's actually do this.
Quite a bit of things to we're going to be jumping around here in your story, so
Yeah,
bear
yeah,
with me.
yeah.
So when you decided you're working for that construction company, and then you actually start to do things on the side again with From the Ground Up. Did you specifically decide to get into hardscaping, or was it a vast array of services, from the softscaping, the ground maintenance? What
Yeah.
was that like?
So I really wanted to get into the hardscaping. That's always where like my passion kind of went to, but we didn't have a lot of experience with it. So the landscaping stuff, easy. We just jumped in right to that. Your spring cleanups, your mulching, your re-landscaping designs, stuff like that. And then slowly got into the hardscaping. By the time we were about to switch over, it was mainly hardscaping that we were doing. And anything from decks and paver patios to stamped concrete patios, we kind of kept it all in that world, we've never done any maintenance, so no grass cutting, no recurring type of revenue. It's always project based.
And then from your and nowadays, what does the company look like in terms of services? Just like you explained there, still the same thing, project based and those lines of services, and the size of company, number of crews, employees.
Yep. So right now we're running four full-time crews. So we have two crews that we consider our hardscaping, landscape side of the world. So we kind of have the company split in half. Two crews are landscape, hardscape, anything in that world. The other two crews, we consider them construction. So that's everything from your decks, your pergolas, gazebos, pavilions, patio coverings attached to the house. To we also have a portion of the business where we do some commercial construction. So interior renovations, stuff like that. So that's why it's really separated.
Gotcha.
Because it's different set of guys, different set of tools, different set of skill sets. And then our hardscaping, we do everything from, some softscape redesign landscape to water features, outdoor kitchens, anything in the outdoor living world.
And then that construction side of things, did that come from your experience working for that construction company to want to kind of bring that into from the ground up, or was it the right guy that you found to hire to implement that? Where did that come from?
So, I originally was like, we want to be this one-stop shop for outdoor living. That's what I want. So, part of outdoor living, at least in our neck of the woods, is decks and covered patios. And I've always found, at least with the people that we have, my guys that were good at construction weren't always good at hardscaping, and the guys that were good at hardscaping weren't necessarily, carpenters. So, I was kind of rare, kind of a weirdo that I could do both. So, and I liked both. So that's why we kind of went with that. And then my dad ended up starting his own business that does commercial contracting. So we've kind of picked up a job here and there from him, and it just snowballed into some more work.
And then, so from your experience, from dad's company, starting a company in high school, and then going to another commercial grounds company, and then a construction company, what were some things that you were able to pick up on the way they ran their company that you're able to implement into your company nowadays? And then vice versa of that, if you could also think it at the same time, some things that you definitely didn't want to have in from the ground up.
Yeah. So the company that my dad worked for, that then I went and worked for,
Right.
it it taught me what not to do with people, and how to burn people out, and how to really cause someone's drive to not necessarily be there. And then the construction company I worked for, even though it was a very large company, they tried to keep it as family oriented as possible. And I liked that feel, right? It's one thing everyone kind of knows about me is my family's like the most important thing to me. So I want that to be part of this business all the way weave through, from our clientele to our employees. I know the families, I know the children, everyone, we may have get-togethers, it's everyone's family, it's, that's all part of it. So that kind of shows you both sides of the world of how to treat people is really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And then, you notice some different things as far as bookkeeping, accounting, cash flow, how people do things. But the main thing was just how you treat people.
Yeah, for sure. And nowadays, any specific policies or things that you could pick from that maybe you brought from those previous companies or were inspired by those previous companies, or bonus programs, incentives, things like that that you could talk about?
Yeah. So one thing that we've brought into our company is our foremen, crew leaders, they need to have something to strive towards, right? So we use a software that the guys can see the hours on the job, how they're doing, this and that. So then we base a bonus program on them beating hours, and not only beating the hours, but not having callbacks either. So if we have a callback for something, those hours get put to that job. So if you beat
Gotcha.
it by 20 hours and then we got to go back and fix something for 30, you're in the whole -10. Um, and that's a running total every 6 months that we get together, figure out, where the foreman is, where the crew is on that, and then distribute a bonus based on that. Um, I've kind of found that that gives the foreman a lot more incentive, and they can actually keep track of it and know what they're doing and how that affects them on a day-to-day basis.
I like that. And how have you found how long has that bonus program been implemented, and how have you found that those callbacks specifically affect the foreman? Have you found that amount of callbacks have decreased a little? Has the bonus program even been implemented long enough for you to see that? Or what's the feedback like from your foreman about it?
So last year we had maybe one or two very minor callbacks. We really don't have a lot. So our hardscape foreman, they pretty much all got bonuses because it was pretty well oiled machine. Now this year we've had a couple small callbacks for different things, but I'm going to attribute that mainly to growing and growing
Mhm.
pains and not having three or four of myself to look at everything. Um, but I would say in another year or two, we'll probably be able to tell, how it trends. Now, I would
Yeah,
hope it trends how it did last year. Um, but you also have some outside factors that affect everything that you have to take with a grain of salt too. Weather,
yeah,
uh, you know, me estimating the job or a full-time salesman can, sometimes we make mistakes. It's not a, perfect science to estimate something. So I would say another year or two, we'll have a really good pulse on what it's going to be.
you mentioned just like beating those hours. Do you give them a cut from the total revenue, gross profit, or just like a cut of labor hours, what it would it cost, that difference, and distribute that as a bonus? Or is it like a X amount of dollars for bonus if they hit a certain amount of, projects under those hours that they get that?
Yeah, so I take um I will whatever hours we beat on that project, I will then take a all of those hours and multiply them by a portion dollar amount of our dollar per hour. So we still will keep the profit on it, but you don't necessarily have the cost on it. So we'll take a portion of that and pay that to them.
Got it.
Now it's based on the position. So a foreman here, 3 years gets X amount, a second helper gets X amount, and then the third person, if there's a third person on that crew, will get a smaller portion.
Got it. Yeah, I'm just picking apart bonus structures, and everybody
Yeah.
does it differently. So it's something that I've been curious about, at least this year,
Yeah.
in how everybody does that there. With your crews, do you find certain crew sizes do better in terms of efficiency than others, or is it very different, especially with the kind of two different silos of your business that you have there?
Yeah, our construction company or side of the world is two-man crews. Anything more than that, it seems to we get lost.
Hmm.
Um, our hardscaping and landscaping, three-man crews are great, but sometimes I notice that third person is standing around. So it all depends on what they're doing. If we can afford to, I'll drop a crew down to two people to go do excavation. Um, and then we'll put that third person back in when it's time to, get the base installed and get, screed in and start laying pavers. Um, in a perfect world, I'd have two-man crews on the hardscape side with then one person that floats back and forth. But right now we have two crews of three. Just kind of how good people kind of fell in our lap, and if you find a good person, it's better to pick them up and take them.
Yeah. At what time did you hire your salesperson? In terms of business size, doesn't have to necessarily be revenue dollars, but the crew sizes or crew amounts and number of employees. At what time did that seem like a good idea to hire on that full-time salesperson? And where did that salesperson come from? Was it within the company, outside the company? Did you know them, and so on and so forth there?
So I've been toying with it for about a year. So let me give you a little bit of backstory to kind of frame everything up, right? So first year we did about 400,000 in revenue. And then we went to 750 and then 950. And then the third, or yeah, our third and fourth year, we were right around the same, million and then 1.3, 1.4. The first year we did it with almost 12 people. The second year we did it with 4 people and myself. So we had this huge rise of inefficiencies and then came back down.
Right.
But I never got rid of the overhead that we had for, almost 12 people. So we had extra trucks sitting around, extra equipment sitting around. So last year, we were doing well on jobs, but it was just like, man, we're still not, cash isn't there, right? And then you sit back, you're like, you know what? I do have 2 trucks sitting down there all year, and I have this and that. And it's like, we got to bump back up, but we got to do it right. I couldn't sell and watch 4 crews. So that's why we jumped back down. But now we had to smart go back up. So I like talking about the work, but I don't like going to people's house and meeting the next person, the next person, the next person. I like helping install. I like driving the truck. I like running the excavator. So I needed a salesperson. So we've had Ken for about 2 months now. And it was probably a 2 month process of us getting together and figuring all the details out and everything from compensation plans. I didn't have a compensation plan set up, so I had to figure that out for him, to a vehicle, all those little details. Um, so we've had him about 2 months. We're projected to try to be around 2.4 this year. So that's kind of what we're shooting for. But I'd say once you get past 2 crews, you have to quickly figure out what you want to do as the owner. Do you want to be the guy in the field, or do you want to be the guy in the office and out there selling? Because you can't do both. Once you get past 2 crews, you can't. And it was hurting us. Me trying to be too much was hurting the company.
Yeah, how did you make that decision? Was it a breaking point in your personal life, possibly? Because obviously, with work, that whole work-life balance. Was it something within the business? Like, what was that breaking point where you're like, okay, I need to sit down, like you said, decide what this business is and what this business is going to be tomorrow?
Yeah. The main thing was just, sitting at the end of 23 and seeing all this awesome work we did and how we did well on the jobs. It's not like we were missing hours on them, but then at the end of the year, not having the net profit that you want, and then sitting back and figuring out why. And it's like, all right, well, we have to make a change. Either we need to get rid of things and go back to just 2 crews and, I can bounce around and keep that, or we need to, put butts in seats and hands on tools and fill these 4 crews that we had. And I just figured, you know what, let's give it a shot and go for it. And then the process started for finding that salesperson. And that's not an easy process. Of all things, I found him on Indeed. Indeed linked him to a hardscaping position, not even a sales position. So I then gave him a call because I saw his credentials, and I'm like, I know we linked for this position, but I really think you're set up for our sales position. I mean, you have 25 years experience, so he's older gentleman than me, and probably smarter in a lot of ways, which is not a bad thing. You're supposed to surround yourself with people that are better than you. And, he had experience from owning his own tree business to certified arborist to he was in the commercial grounds world as well. So he kind of knows little bits of everything.
How long did it take you from getting him in or hiring him to getting him set up to be able to do his own sales or go on sales calls and all that to understand, say, the hardscape industry, the construction industry, whatever it might be?
So I'm still kind of doing the sales for the construction part.
Got it.
Because that's, if you don't understand all of that entirely, it's a little bit more difficult than the hardscaping part because you got to think about sizing of joists and everything like that. Eventually, he has some interest in learning some of that, so we'll slowly work into that. But as far as we went a couple ride-alongs before he came over. He'd take a vacation day and come and, ride along, and we'd go to a couple appointments. And then the first week I went with him for a couple appointments. And then right now, he's getting them out. He's already got stuff sold, and I double check it. We have a system set up, anything less than 10,000, I just look over it quick and he can send it out. 10 to 30, I want to see his notes. 30 and above, I really want to dive deep into it. I want to really look into it. And then if it's above 65 grand, then I want to go out and actually see it.
Mm.
So we kind of have a checks and balances, I guess you could
Yeah.
say.
Is there a ideal project size for yourself from the ground up? Does it differ from those two different silos?
Yeah, and it also, well, not from different silos, right?
Okay.
I think the construction side, because sometimes you have subcontractors and you have other things moving, you can do a much larger job and it not really have the same impact on you,
Right.
because you have a small portion of it. You're just managing the whole thing. The hardscaping and landscaping part, we've done jobs over $100,000. We've done jobs less than $1,000. It just right now, and I think every crew is different too, right? Like
Mm.
the different crew leaders could have different strengths. So like I think, one might be the 30 to 45 range, and the other one I think can handle a little bit bigger, a little bit more detail oriented. So you just have to figure out your strengths of everybody and try to mix them.
Definitely. Trey, what does your day to day look like in the business these days?
I'm still trying to figure that out, to be honest with you. So I mean, up until our sales guy, it was pretty much meetings all day long, and I would try to stop and hit a job whenever I could and stop and order materials. And, that's changing. There's still some things I have to go see, but right now it's, we have 7 o'clock meeting when everyone gets here. We try to meet with the foreman a little bit before that, just kind of go over everything. And then I go out and hit all the jobs. If we need materials, I'll pick them up. If I have office work, I'll try to get that done. If not, I'll try to, help on a job site, which seems like every time I try to, something else happens. So I got to go deal with that. But it seems to change a lot. In my mind, I thought it was going to be help get the guys out, order materials, and then be helping them work. But it hasn't quite worked out that way yet. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Gotcha. At what point in time did you implement a software into your business? What was the decision behind doing that? I know you said software. I know you're with Synced Up, and you're welcome to say Synced Up on this podcast. Absolutely. But at what point in time did you have a software before that? Did you test different softwares, and what was like the thing about, what, we need a software in our business the way we're growing?
Yeah. So right out the bat, I went with a software from the day I started in 2019. Before that, I was typing everything up, and like as a side business, yes, it was a side business, but I treated it as a business. Like I still had insurance. It still was an LLC. I did everything on Excel and Word. And then the first couple times I started doing that full time, I'm like, this takes too long. So I just Googled landscape software, and the first thing that come up was LMN. So I used that for the first, I guess it would have been 19, 20, and 21. Um, and really the breaking point came to when I needed things to change and I wanted more and I couldn't get more from them. And then I happened upon Weston at a Techo trade show. So we made the change, and it's really helped our business. I mean, from the get-go, like we don't have that. We didn't have a software, then we got a software, and our world turned, 360. We don't necessarily have that, but it's just made our life a lot easier. And I'm a numbers guy. Like as much as I do like the work part of it, I also do like the budgeting and looking at how we're doing and keeping track of that and knowing what our costs are.
Did you have to grow into that type of person, or did that come naturally, like you said, when you were doing it on the side and that was a side business and you enjoyed being in the field, but you also enjoyed this other part of the business?
The numbers part of it, I think, has always been natural. So,
Okay.
like when I was in high school, I would buy things off Craigslist and then flip them. So I always knew like what I was buying it for, what I was selling it for, and making money was always the thing to chase. So I'd say I've had to grow into knowing what all the different things are you're supposed to know, like the difference between a P&L and your, balance sheet and why they're different. Sometimes I still don't understand, but I get what we need to look for. But yeah, it's kind of a mix of both. You have to have a
Gotcha.
like for it to grow into it, right? Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're a, you know, a round peg in a square hole.
We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Cycle CPA. It's crucial to review your financial statements on a monthly basis so you can diagnose areas for improving your business's financial health early before they become significant issues. Too many contractors wait until the end of the year to review their financials as they file taxes, when it's often too late to take action to change the outcome. Cycle CPA not only handles bookkeeping and taxes, but they also ensure that you're armed with financial data on a monthly basis to make key business decisions. They offer benchmarking, cash flow forecasting, and assistance in developing targets for financial metrics. With their team of accountants specialized in the hardscape and landscape industry, they currently work with hundreds of companies in this field. Visit cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. At this point in time, what does your sales process look like, especially with having that full-time salesperson? When somebody reaches out to you for the first time, whether it's a phone call, email, whatever it might be, where do you take that from there?
Yep. So if it's, on our website or social media or email or anything like that, it generally goes right to my wife, who kind of runs our, office part of it. And she will then go into synced up and she'll set up a consultation for Ken or myself to go out and, kind of figure all that out. We used to charge a consultation fee when it was just me because I couldn't keep up with everything. Um, Now she does pre-screen them, so we're not just going to everything. She has a list of questions and she has budgetary things that she goes over with them. We're working on a almost like a worksheet that will be on our website that somebody can go through and do a budget calculator for their project, kind of stealing it from Tussey Landscape, um, just to kind of take some of that back end work and get it done before they ever reach out. Uh, Originally, people would just call my cell phone or text me or email me, Facebook message me, and I'd say 50% of them I'd get back to. The other 50% I wouldn't. So this is, really help streamline the process.
What kind of questions are you asking in that pre-qualifying process to decide, okay, this might be a client for ours, we can go ahead and schedule that consultation, or no, this is not the type of client we want?
Yep. So main thing, first thing's location. Are you within our geographical area that we want to travel to? We say it's within an hour of our shop. Obviously, we like to be a lot closer, but if it's a decent job within an hour, we'll go to it. Then it's what type of project, so we can kind of funnel it from there. And they give us some details on it, maybe some pictures. So, they want a patio. Well, how big? Do you know how big? No, we don't know how big, but we want to entertain 5 people. Okay, you're going to be in that 3 to 500 square foot. I want to entertain 20 people. All right, you're 1,000 plus. So it kind of give it that way, so that way we can give them some rough budget numbers.
Right.
Stuff we don't necessarily want to do right off the bat, cutting grass. If somebody asks if we can cut their grass, we can't. We never have, and we can't make it work. Um, we used to not really go out to anything that was only a couple $1,000s, but with the economy changing and having to keep a full-time salesperson busy, we'll go take a look at it. We're not against, a $2,500 job. Now you need to know what your costs are for a day. So if it's a half day worth of work, you're still going to be out there a day because generally you can't go to another half day job. It never works
Yeah.
out.
For
So
sure.
as long as it can make sense financially and geographically for us, we'll try to do it.
And do you charge for that initial consultation? Yes or no? And why or why not?
So yes and no. So we used to until the full-time salesperson, and then I got cold feet and pulled that back off. Um, I don't know if that was the right decision or not, but it was a decision I made to try to help, keep him busy.
Yeah,
Do I notice a
that's
difference? Not yet, but it's been 60 days.
do you plan to ever come back to that? Is there a plan in place or not? I've heard both ways. I've heard like just like you said, we got a salesperson. I want to keep them busy and at least have them do some reps, right? And get that experience. I've also heard the other way of we got a salesperson, so we started to actually charge for consultations.
If the phone rang as much as it rang last year or the year before, sure, we'd keep charging, but we're back to the normal way it was. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for that question. It's something that I'm just gonna have to keep, my hand on the pulse and figure out if it starts picking up and we start seeing, a good majority of our jobs are the ones we want, and then we have these little ones that we're wasting time with, then we'll start charging to try to do just keep the ones that we want. Because generally, if it's a 50,000 plus patio, they're okay with spending 75 or $100.
Yeah. Like the more and more people I talk to, especially this year, they're saying the exact same thing where um either they haven't charged for the consultation or they did and now they're not doing it. And there's just this big push these past few years of charge a consultation fee. But ultimately, your overhead for your salesperson is baked in. You're recouping his salary. All that consultation price is a pre-qualifier. It's
Yep.
not going to make you money. You're already making the money you need and so on and so forth there. So as long as you got a good pre-qualification system in place, there's really no point in charging a consultation fee. And that might be a little controversial, maybe, but I don't think it is. And I would love to know your thoughts on that.
I think it's people coming from outside industries into our industry and having an opinion, right? So I'm part of a business group. Bunch of businesses get together, owners, and we talk and this and that. And there's guys with roofing companies that, they charge a consultation fee for somebody to come out and go over your roof, clean it, this and that, and then they try to sell you a new roof, right? And it's, I don't know, $399 or 200, something like that. And then they keep 10 or 12 people busy every day doing that all year round. And they're bringing in, $1 to $2 million. We're not necessarily providing a service when we come out there besides talking about your project. Like they can sell that consultation fee under a roof tune up, right?
Right.
We
Right.
we're not tuning anything up. We're giving you ideas and we're using our expertise on how to design this or do this. Now, I'm not going to come out and give you a 3D design for free. We're not going to do that. But I can come out and talk to you and say, no, I don't think you want to put the patio where the hill, drops a foot every 6 inches, but the flat spot up here, let's do it there. Um, so I just think we've tried to take ways that other people do things and make money and try to put it into our industry where sometimes it doesn't always fit. I mean, I
Right.
know great companies around here that never have charged a consultation fee. And they just pre-qualify. They know the work that they want to do, and that's what they tell people they want to do.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things that I've heard that I know a couple people do is they take the consultation fee, but they make it up front that it's a donation. So we take that, we donate it. So
Okay.
I mean, that's a good way to kind of
Yeah.
circumvent that, I think.
Yeah. And then we did it where you paid the fee and then it came back to you at the end.
Right.
Do you have any idea how hard that is to remember who paid a fee and who didn't? I mean,
Yeah.
it was impossible. Most of the time, I just waited for somebody to tell me, "Hey, you forgot to take it off." It's like, okay, because you have referrals that don't get charged, and you have
Yeah.
return customers that don't get charged. It was a headache and a half.
When it comes to landing that project, Uh, do you have certain payment structures that you have in place for certain types of projects, certain milestone payments, or what do you take to get on the schedule? What do you try to leave at the very end of the project? Is it fairly consistent from project to project?
Yeah, so anything less than 20 grand, we do 50% upfront to schedule and 50% when we're finished. Um, from 20 grand to a lot of times it's 75. I kind of leave it open ended. We split it up into three payments: 35% to schedule and order materials, 35% the week before we show up, and the remainder 30 at the end of the project. When you start getting over that $75,000 and it starts to be a 4, 5, 6 week project, we start breaking it up based on the commencement of work. And then you try to get it to where at the very end, you're really only out maybe 10%, something like that. It's just safer for the contractor. Even when you get to that 30% at the end being owed, on a 60, let's just say between 60 and $70,000 project, 18, 20 grand, that's a lot of money. That's more than your profit.
Yeah,
So that, that hurts if you don't get paid.
for sure. Uh, going backtracking now to the initial consultation, especially with your salesperson, do you have a list of things, even like a printout or just like an online doc of just make sure you get this information before you come back to the office, like access into the backyard and so on and so forth there?
No, we should.
Okay.
We're working on it, but that's one of the hardest things I think about owning a business is trying to download what you have in your head to everybody
Yeah,
else. And like it, we need to make a sheet like that goes through and they can hit everything. Um, a software system makes the estimating part of it so much easier with calculators and this and that. You don't have to know how to take your square footage times how many inches of stone and then divide it by 27 for cubic yard. Like it's got that in there. But as far as making sure, our sales guy knows access, what machine we're going to be able to get in there, because that changes the ball game entirely. Um, do we have enough room to get a truck back there to load right into, or are we driving all the way? So we're still working on that, and that's why we kind of have more checks and balances that we can look at it and see and kind of go through it.
definitely. Yeah, I forget sometimes. That's why I asked that
Oh
question.
yeah,
Sometimes,
yeah,
sometimes I get back home and I'm ready to quote, and I didn't even measure the gate access. So,
yep. And then you're stopping back by before you go to your job in the morning.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. As we get into, I guess I talked about prices, how you go about pricing structure. Next question I usually ask after that is might have to do with pricing or getting paid or anything like that. And that has to do with a horror story. Trey, do you have a horror story from your time in business, whether that's working on the side or starting your own business up until this point that you'd want to share with our audience? This isn't to put you on blast or anything. This is just to help the beginning contractor understand what they're getting into, maybe put guardrails in place for them and themselves to avoid these things. But Trey, do you have a horror story you'd want to share with us?
I've had a couple. We've taken some lumps and some bruises. A lot of them are self-inflicted, but uh, one that's been going on for a couple years is we did a bunch of work for a custom home builder. First job we did, they paid great. Second job, a little later. Third job, a little later. Fourth job, fifth job, sixth job. Well, I'm still waiting. It's been 2.5 years. And then I was on vacation a couple weeks ago, and I saw on Facebook he filed bankruptcy. So, a family friend that you thought would take care of you as soon as he had the money, he'll pay you. That hurts. And then we've had things where you don't set the boundary where you're at the job and how many things you'll come back and do for them for free, and then you're doing it all summer long. So, like we had one, it was a small little porch that we put some composite decking on, and a couple screws popped like 2 months later. So I came out, put new ones in, put the plugs back in, and it was fine. A couple months later, same thing happened. Well, they wanted to reuse their structure. We were just putting a facelift on it. And it was part of it. Hey, you should really replace this, but I know you're trying to save money. We're going to put it on there, and we needed the work, so let's do it. I mean, I've had it to where 3 years he called me back and said, "Hey, a couple of them screws pop, and I stripped this one out." And I'm like, I can't keep coming back for this. We should have just done a whole new structure.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that that you gotta really put your foot down. In the beginning, you can't, right? You have to take what work you can. Um, but like now, if it needs replaced, either we're replacing it or we're not doing the job because
Right.
as you grow, it gets way more expensive to send one person back. When it was just me going back, it's not free, but it's free. So
Yeah.
those are the ones that you get a text message at 6:30, 7 o'clock in Saturday evening, and the rest of your night's ruined, and your wife wonders
Yeah.
if you're in a bad mood.
Yeah, I get that for sure. Oh, that hits deep actually.
Yeah.
Trey, do you have anything in terms of equipment, systems, installation practices? This is more just a general question that I like to ask each of our guests because sometimes something comes up that we can kind of pick apart here. But like I said, any equipment that you live by in your business, installation practices, systems in place, anything like that that you'd want to touch on.
Yeah. So we do everything open graded. That was something I switched to right when we kind of started going full time. To me, it was more foolproof than trying to get your dense graded to the right compaction, right? Um, I couldn't buy a $20,000 plate compactor my first year in business, so we're using the $1,000 one and just hoping that our dense graded base was compacted. So switched to open graded. We do a little bit deeper excavation than a lot of people, but my main thing is I don't want to come back. Um, so we excavate 14 inches from top of paver to base of excavation. We do a woven geotextile on the bottom, halfway up through our 57s. We do geogrid, then more 57s, and then number nines. This year, we used to do only an inch number nines, but this year we switched to a little bit bigger screed pull because we bent like a million of them last year. Um, so it's more like an inch and a half. It's not quite 14 inches, but that's how we install our pavers. Our retaining walls and everything like that is to spec based on how tall the wall is, but we always do a foot of stone below them. I know a lot of people say you can get away with 6 inches, but how much more does it really cost you to do a foot? Not a
Sure.
whole.
Yeah.
Um, as far as equipment, I mean, we have a mini skid loader, two full size skid loaders, and then a 306 Mini X. It's got a fancy tilt rotator on it, but um, we didn't get an Encon. We had an Encon before, and that machine was too small, so we got rid of it. It's Cat actually makes their own tilt rotator.
Right.
The biggest thing for us, equipment wise, is service. So we can get pretty much any brand that you want in our area. Everyone has a dealer. Um, but Caterpillar, Cleveland Brothers, they seem to be the best service, and that's made a world of difference for us. We ever have an issue, they're out within a couple hours to fix it. Um, yeah, it might cost, depending on the machine, a little bit more than some others, but during COVID, I went and got a Bobcat T76 because I couldn't get a machine from anybody else for months, and I've had nothing but issues with it. I mean, just issue after issue after issue, to the point where I try to sell it back to the dealer, and they won't even buy it back because they know it's the limit. So the biggest thing's just the service. If they will take care of you, then that's what you try to stick to. One of the things I see a lot of people losing time on is just organization. Like knowing where everything is in your job trailer or your truck, um, keeping all that stuff clean. It just that makes a big difference. Um, I have some guys that are really good at it, and some guys you have to keep your foot on them 24/7. But as business owners, we're spending lots and lots of money on tools, and I've been known to walk into a job trailer and empty the entire thing out and tell them to put it all back in because it's just a wreck. Um, and people think homeowners don't care about that, but 90% of your homeowners have no idea what a good job is, but they know what a mess is. And that's the first thing they're going to complain about.
I like that. Um, how going back to your incentive or bonus structure, how do you have anything that you're trying or thinking about putting in place for those types of things? The organization, the showing up on time to work and things like that.
Not necessarily,
Okay.
because I kind of feel like if I make them empty their trailer out on job and they have to put it all back together and spend that time, that's coming out of that job. I'm not
Right.
putting that into overhead or something else. You're hurting yourself.
Right.
One of the other things I completely forgot about we do, and this was mainly before our sales guy was here, so it's kind of I don't really know how it's going to work moving forward, but um, if my guys upsold the client on something or got them to, because they can see what the client didn't pick, if they got them to do one of those, they'll get commission on it. So they'll get 3%.
Nice. Nice.
It's not a lot of money, but it, I was going to pay it to somebody else anyway for commission. So I give it to you guys. You did the work. So maybe we'll split it, or maybe I'll just throw in another 3%, three to the sales guy and three to the field guys. They should make back that 3% on another job somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Anybody that you look to for inspiration, mentorship, online, offline, throughout your time in business, going back to when you're doing side projects, anybody that you want to give a shout out here that, like I said, online, offline, inspiration, mentorship, anything like that that you want to give a shout out.
Yeah, so there's a lot. So like I'm on Instagram just like everybody, and you see everyone's stuff. I see your stuff all the time, and I think everybody that's in this industry looks at people like Andy Mulder and Jeremy Swihart, and you got guys in Pennsylvania like Inca Stone that are doing just awesome work. I think Weston's a big proponent of this whole social media thing and how he's helping everyone. He doesn't necessarily care where you are or who you use. He'll answer questions for you whenever. Um, and I like some of that stuff's kind of shows all the good. And I like what you guys do with your podcast, Not Our Finest Hour, that actually shows how we actually feel inside.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say, as much as I look at that stuff, there are some times that you sit back and you're like, well, what am I doing wrong? Or I'm going to do it this way, and then it doesn't work for me. Like I've got into that where I see these other guys doing this thing, so we're going to do it, and then it doesn't work for us. So I'm kind of stepping back from that a little bit and getting back
Hmm.
to our core where, when I first started, it was running everything past two people. One was my dad. Um, just because your dad's going to give you what he thinks is going to be best for you, right?
Right.
Um, and they're always going to be looking out for you. They don't have an ulterior motive. Um, and then when it comes to like the actual industry things and running a business, there's a landscape company down by me. It's called Lenhoff's Landscaping, and then he also has a supply place now, Rob Lenhoff. And I think he does some of the best work that I've ever seen, and he's probably one of the best people I've ever met. I mean, he'll answer my call and we'll talk for an hour because I'm frustrated about this or asking about trucks or what to spend money on, and he'll always answer and he always helps whenever I need something. So having people like that that's close to you that can feel your economy and your area and how to do things, it's just that's everything, right?
Yeah.
But he's also a person that's not very flashy, doesn't have a huge social media presence. So like you'd look him up and you probably couldn't find him. But he has this amazing business of not only install, but this supply store he started that is just blowing up. Mainly that's because you're doing it the right way.
I like that point. It's very easy to see what people put out on Instagram and think, why don't I have that, or why haven't I done that, or so on or so forth. Um, Looking at like the whole tilt rotator thing, I will never own one. Not because I don't like tilt rotators, I don't think it's a great idea. Our access points in where I do work don't warrant having a large enough machine that has a tilt rotator.
Yep.
So like things like that are um cool, but don't apply to me specifically. And there's tons of things like that you could, and I'm sure you have picked apart and been like, yeah, that doesn't make sense for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like those devices, I'm not going to call them out by name, that you can put on the back of a truck and shoot material into a wheelbarrow. They make no sense for my business. For the cost of what they are, it's a cool idea. I wish I came up with them and was selling them and was doing that well, but it doesn't make any sense for us.
Yeah.
Or, I look at those telebelt style dump trailers and I just see somebody tearing that thing in the first week, and now I'm buying a whole new belt. That's the way I look at it.
As we come to a close here, a couple more questions I've got for you. One is something right now in your business that you're struggling with, that you're working on overcoming, have a plan set in place, or just discovered. Do you have anything that you'd want to talk about that you're currently struggling with in your business?
Two things. So the first one would be we, getting our people where they need to be in positions and training new guys. It's really hard to hit your labor hours. So we're working on getting that righted, right? So the whole spring we're training new people. We're going through people because people didn't work out. And I think we finally have people in places that we need, but it's getting the efficiencies back where they were last year. Now that we noticed the issue was we needed to have more sales and more revenue, now it's making sure that we're not losing those efficiencies that we created last year because of the more. So I think that's a really hard growing pain that a lot of people go through. Um, and then that kind of stems into what I would say our second issue is what do I want to be in this business? Um, everything's changed so much in, 5, 6 years that I thought I was going to be the salesperson for the business and the face of the business. And I could still be, I guess, the face of it, but I don't want to be out there selling anymore. I want to help get our efficiencies in place and be there on the last day that we're finishing up a job and, talk to the homeowner and, that kind of stuff. All figuring all these things out, it puts a lot of strain on the business. So it's just making sure that one, you don't bounce back and forth between different things and actually making your mind up and doing it, which is a lot harder than what most people think.
Final question for you, Trey. What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very beginning? This could be personal related, business related. This could be from the start of your side business to the start of your current business. Anything, take this wherever you want. But what's one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very beginning?
Kind of twofold. One is, if you think you're going to start your own business to have more vacations and more freedom in life, it doesn't necessarily happen. And two, once you start your own business, you're going to really figure out who are the people that look out for you and aren't, trying to get something from you. I'd say in the first 2 to 3 years, you learn that pretty quick. And those people that have your back, you should really appreciate them because they're rare.
Great thing to bring up there. Trey, thank you so much for your time here today. I got to briefly meet you at H&A. Hopefully I get to see you this year as well in October there. But Trey, where can our audience go to find out more about you, your Instagram, wherever you want to send them to for From the Ground Up? Where can our audience find out more about you?
Yeah, so I'm Trey Chilcote, owner of From the Ground Up. Our Instagram is From the Ground Up 17327. We specialize in anything outdoor living, and I am a hardscaper.
Perfect. Trey, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Go check out Trey from the Ground Up at From the Ground Up 17327 on Instagram. And if you enjoy this podcast, I would very much appreciate 5-star rating, review, Spotify, Apple, and a written review if you could on Apple while you're doing that rating. That really does help the show. Sharing the show with anybody that you think might find some sort of value from these episodes. We've got a great schedule of podcasts coming up, as well as any suggestions on future topics, guests, anything that you'd like to hear. You can send me those at howtohardscape on Instagram or contact@howtohardscape.com. And if you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA. That's cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. And if you're looking for a software to dive into, the How to Hardscape Headquarters software can help you with budgeting, estimating, job costing, time tracking, scheduling, and so much more. At How to Hardscape on Instagram. Send me a message if you want to learn more, or just go to members.howtohardscape.com to learn more about that, our training resources, and schedule a demo with me directly there. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.